Well, good morning everyone. I'm back from my holidays and it's time to crack on with things. Today I'm going to be doing a Reaktor tutorial, and one of the things I've found has been difficult. Well, I wouldn't go so far as to say difficult, but more confusing than I thought it would be getting into Reaktor Blocks. So I'm going to start with building a psychedelic trance based synth, which is a really simple patch and will serve as a really useful way to illustrate what we can and can't do in Reaktor Blocks. So without further ado, let's load up Reaktor. And again, let's load a new ensemble. So we have a space to work within, and that will allow us to get at the individual Reaktor block components. So it opens up in this double pane view, which is quite useful. I'll stretch that out all the way across there. And that's the panel view, so I'm going to jump into the new view. Okay, so now I'll go to library, and here are my Reaktor blocks. With psychedelic trance based synth, typically you're looking at a one oscillator sound driven through a filter and an amp envelope. So the problem that I thought I would find occurred within Reaktor blocks, and actually didn't occur within Reaktor blocks, was the oscillator triggery problem. Psychedelic trance, it tends to be a 16th bass, or whatever you think of that as a concept, it does tend to be 16th basses, or a lot of them. And that can be a problem with monophonic notes and re-triggering the oscillator so you get a steady sound. Happily, someone at Native Instruments knows how to program an oscillator, so we don't have to worry about that. It's simply a drag and drop. And the oscillator that we want for this sound is this one. It's the bento box oscillator. So I'm going to drag that in, and the reason is that it has sync and reset, really. If I show you some of the other oscillators, I think there's one in an oscillator. Here we go. It doesn't seem to reset nearly so effectively to my mind. It doesn't have a phase control. We jump around to the panel view. I can't adjust the phase of it, where I can adjust the phase here. Or if we go into the Monarch oscillator, again, we're dealing with much the same thing. There's not even a reset on that. That is just a free running oscillator. Other oscillators in here. There's this OS5, but that's a very different kettle of fish. That's more of a, I call that a electric piano type deal. None of these are suitable, really, unfortunately. It's just this bento box oscillator. So it's a good thing. It's so good. And we're going to need some MIDI. So this is kind of how I work with blocks. I kind of chuck all the blocks I need. Like, I know I'm going to need an oscillator. I know I'm going to need what note I'm playing. I chuck all these blocks in and then fiddle around with the wires. And at the end of it, I kind of have, hopefully, what I thought I was going to get. And then I might modify it a little bit more beyond that. I'm going to need a filter. I'm not sure what filter I want yet. So we'll take the Monarch filter. And I'll throw these over here. We'll take the pool filter. And we'll take the dual SKF filter. That's all the filters that come with blocks. And we'll drag them over there. I don't know which one I want. And the output from the waveform is going to go directly into the filter at this point, at least. So I can wire that up straight away. And then I will want a amplitude envelope. Well, just amplitude control. So I think it's in bento box. Yep. I want the VCA, and I also want two ADSRs. So I need one to control the filter and one to control the VCA. And that is kind of everything we need to make a bass synth. A basic one, but there's not a lot else to it in terms of making a bass synth. So from this, which is my note in module, I'm going to take the pitch and I'm going to feed that into the pitch of the oscillator. I am also going to take the gate output and put that into reset. So now every time I get a new gate trigger, I'll move it across here. Every time I get a new gate trigger out of here, the phase of the oscillator which I'll now drag across here. The phase of the oscillator will reset, and I'm going to click that reset, and it will reset to whatever we have here. The next thing I'm going to do is light that legato. So if I play 2 notes at once, it will glide to the second note I played, and it won't reset the phase of the oscillator. As I said, someone knows how to code an oscillator in here, thank goodness. And then I'm going to decide on one of these filters. I'm not sure which one yet. What am I doing? So yeah, I'll decide on one of these filters. I send the gate to this envelope here. And I'll send the gate also to this envelope here. So again, every time we play a note, the envelopes re-trigger. And if we play 2 notes in legato mode, they don't re-trigger. And I have to tie these up. So what you'll find on the panel is it can be a little confusing to figure out which envelope is which. And unfortunately, the easy way around that is to rename them. So I'm going to rename that filter env, and I'll rename this amp env. If I jump around to the panel, see, I've put them the wrong way around inadvertently. So I'll move that back across. Now that's next to that. And this took me ages to figure out. To get your VCA connected to your envelope, click on modulation route A and whack that right up. We'll jump back around into panel. And now, so I've used modulation A in my VCA, and I want to go from the output into modulation A. And then from there, this output goes straight into the outputs of the software. I'm going to do much the same thing with these. I'm going to take the output of my envelope and tie it into modulation point A. If you've watched any of my music production tutorials, you'll know that I'm a big fan of using key tracking filters. So I'm also going to take the pitch from my MIDI and put that into the filter pitch input so I can get a key tracking sound. And just for choosing a filter sound, I'm going to also put in a mixer unit. Oh, library. Utility, mix 4, that'll do. And that puts 4 signals down into 1. So I'm going to take the output of these, I'll take the Moog filter, I'll put into Moog filter, Moog, whatever. I'll take the output of that and put it into L1. I'll take the output of the pool filter, put it into L2, and I'll take the output of the SKF filter and put it into L3. And so this is sort of like an MS-20 filter, this is sort of like a Moog filter, and this is its own thing really, as far as I can establish. And then we'll take out L and put that into the VCA. Now we should, at this point, have sound. So let's check that out. I'll write in a MIDI patch. Sounds like a synth. Let's try fairly low. Not crazy. A lot of psy-trance are written in E, so why not? There we go. There's our little patch. And as you can hear, the phase is locked. And the difference, if I take that off, should be quite clear. So now it's the same every time. the saw wave is our typical starting point. It's got all the harmonics in it that it can have, so we'll start with that. I'll turn that down a bit just to save my ears. So we'll start with that, and I'll leave that running gently in the background while we try and pick one. I'm going to turn these down and work with them one at a time. And the order I had them on was the Monarch filter, the Pool filter, and the Boutique filter. So at the moment it's just, there we go, just the Monarch filter I'm working with. Now what I said was I want a key tracking. I'm in the mini mode. So rude. Okay, so I click on A and I want A to control cutoff. You can see now that the envelope is connected to the cutoff. Turn that up a bit. There we go. So that's the sound of one of our oscillators. I think our patch could go down an octave. There's not a lot of bass in it. That's better. You see, now we're starting to hear the problem of not resetting the phase. It's like our bass is wavering. So I'll turn that back on. And it's completely static. Maybe about that. See, when I go back past the 0 point, I get this kind of upper end click. There it is. So standard rules apply. Let's set the cutoff. I've got the sustain on 0, releases out a bit. I mean, that is essentially a psy-trance bass. It's a very quiet one, but it is definitely psy-trance bass. And with the Moog filter, it can pay dividends to have a think about your input and output stage, but with the gain of it. But we'll deal with that in a second. So let's try another filter now. Let's try our Pool filter. Cuts in about the same place. Key tracking is on. Oh. Oh, look at that, it's got a mute button, so what am I doing? Well, I suspect I like the pull filter straight away more. And now we'll introduce our SKF filter as well. Keep chucking right up. Well, take your pick, really. Any of those could work. Let's put in just a little bit of square wave. Something like that, maybe. Well, it's an interesting choice. The pull filter is quite flabby down low, and that's good and bad. The SKF is a much tighter sounding filter, but has this HP already in there. I can even use the resonance there as a boost. And then there's the Moog filter, which kind of sits up a bit more. And I think we're going to go with the pull filter on this occasion. And that doing so will allow us to save on some CPU because currently we're running 3 filters. So I'm going to delete that filter. I'm going to delete that filter. And I'm going to bypass the mixer now. And pretty much that's our very, very basic synthesizer, which will allow us to do psy-trance bass. I've heard worse psy-trance bass than that, especially because there's no EQ whatsoever. So how might we improve that? Well, we could have a little look in the library, and see what else we can get in there. So we could also put in a driver, and we could put in a driver before the filter. Would be where I would suggest you put in a driver when you're out in this sort of patch. So we go from the output into the out, in out, and then from out into the filter. That's now connected in. Let's move these around a bit, try and get a slightly more logical filter flow. Probably about as good as it's going to get. So let's try that. Immediately you can hear it's kind of gritting up our sound. I'll try it without again. That is different. I don't know how well it come across on YouTube, but it is different. Let's see what I can get going on with this. So you can hear the driver can be used in quite a subtle manner. Or less subtle. I'm not so sure about that, but it's something to play with. I'm not so sure I've done anything to benefit the sound there. But what I am demonstrating is that I have an extremely flexible tone generation. Just from one oscillator and the driver unit, I can get all sorts of harmonic interest to shove through this filter here. And this pull filter, there we go, it's a bass boost. Okay, this pull filter has got a ton of good stuff going on with it. I really like this filter. Even kind of down to 18 dB filters, that's always cool. It could also go with a 2-pole filter. That could work at a baseline too. So as you can see, pretty simply and quickly, we've developed a bass synth in Reaktor. And there's probably other things we could do after the event. Certainly we might want to put in, on that I suggest we might want to put in a bit of EQ. It's got a lot of bass content, but it's a pretty smooth looking frequency component. And that changes the sound of it quite a bit, I'd say. A bit more under control. So anyway, I hope that was useful for you. That's a very, very quick introduction into blocks and what they can do for you. And hopefully you can see how quick it is. That was what, 25 minutes, and we built a perfectly respectable bass line for use in psy-trance. It may not be any good for drum and bass or something like that, but you could certainly have a think about using maybe the notch mode in this and generating some interesting harmonic content for drum and bass reeses and things with a slightly different envelope structure. I think it's a pretty flexible thing they've got going on there. Okay, so hope that was useful, and I will see you next time.